Hello, and welcome to the Grand Cinema Hotel, a podcast hosted by two friends who love cinema. Tonight, you'll be joining us as we discuss the cinematic phenomenon we all love, Barbenheimer. So go ahead, get comfortable, and throw on that Do Not Disturb sign as we review a historical week in cinema.
You are the men who gave them the power to destroy themselves. And the world is not prepared.
Hey, Barbie. Can I come to your house tonight?
Sure. I don't have anything big planned, just a giant blowout party with all the Barbies and planned choreography and a bespoke song. You should stop by.
So cool.
This is the best day ever.
It is the best day ever. So is yesterday, and so is tomorrow, and every day from now until forever. Do you guys ever think about dying?
What's going on, all my Barbies and my Oppies? And thank you for checking back in. As always, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Helps out the show a lot. We're back. Sorry to go MIA for a bit. Wasn't planned, but, you know, life gets in the way. But we have been watching movies, and we've been watching some very, very good movies. As always, I'm joined by Alvaro.
What's up, guys?
And you know what it is, man. We're here to talk about Barbenheimer, right?
Yeah, I mean, all year we've been waiting for this. We've been talking about it since last year. The hype is here. It's behind us now even, which feels crazy. But yeah, we're here to finally talk about. I know we've been really excited to get this episode out. Me and you haven't really even talked about it between ourselves like usual. So
yeah, I mean, we've just had a crazy past couple of weeks just doing a bunch of other kind of shit. And I think it's just because it's summer, you know. We have been going to the movies. I mean, there's another movie we're also going to talk about in another episode that's coming out. That was just fantastic as well. But Barbie and Oppenheimer, man, this is what the movies is all about,
Yep.
right? The balance. All things are balanced as they should be, right?
I think that's where I wanted to start with this because of the overall, just how much this kind of proved this whole, them together proved how much people really do love going to the theaters. Obviously Barbie is IP and we'll get into that, but it's the fact that these are original movies. Greta Gerwig is doesn't really have anything to, like, let's say, really reference for a Barbie movie besides, animated shows and stuff like that. So it's just really good to see that the theater has been packed. Me and you thought we could just, hop into usual and try to go watch Oppenheimer in 70 millimeter. We can't. So it's a good, I mean, obviously we're not used to it, but I do think it's a good thing, and shit's hitting the fan. So I think it's just very ironic too.
Yeah, I know, right? We have all these strikes going on with the actors and the writers, and now we have these two fantastic movies that are celebrating the magic of movie making, but also when you reveal and pull the curtain back a bit, you're like, this is disgusting and gross.
Yeah.
But I still love it. I can't help but love movies, and I always want to support movies. So I hope this ends soon because I don't want to run out of stuff to talk about,
Yeah.
I don't want to just be stuck talking about old movies forever because I like talking about the stuff that we go see, like it's just a totally different experience to watch an old movie at home for the first time. Because we had like interesting experiences when we went to both movies. And like that's just something you can't get at home. Like It doesn't matter your TV size, 4K, 1080. If you're watching it on a fucking VCR on a CRTV, it's just watching a movie at home will never replicate the theater experience. So it's almost like, who cares if you're watching it in 4K or 1080? Or if you're watching a Blu-ray or a 4K, like it's does that make it 12 feet tall? Like no, it doesn't. So.
I think it only works.
And the sound,
Yeah, like fine for us because we have the memory of watching a lot of the movies that we love in the theater. So then now when you watch it at home, you kind of even connect with the time we did see it in theater and remember how much, it just validates how much you do like the movie. But I feel like sometimes, some of the movies that I like even from this year that are straight weren't in theaters, that are like, it is harder to have that connection of it being a memory.
I get you, because this is like a collective experience, which you don't really get that much anymore.
Exactly.
I mean, people really loved like John Wick. People really loved Avatar, people really loved. Ironically, people liked Morbius, but like there's these small movements that happen in movies still nowadays, but not like this where the theaters are packed for weeks in advance and people who don't buy tickets online are, what the hell? How come I can't see either of these movies?
You can just walk in and watch it.
I went to the theater and they told me that Oppenheimer sold out for 2 weeks. Like that's unheard of nowadays, which is crazy because we lived in a time when that was normal.
I think even, for example,
not even that long ago.
another aspect or point to that is that there's people who don't usually go to the movie theaters wanting to go to the movie theaters to watch both of these movies, which I think is always the goal for any of the movies and the directors, both who are on these films. That's like the biggest compliment, is that the word of mouth is so intense that people who are like, I haven't gone since the pandemic, want to go watch this.
Yeah, there's like a really nice synergy going on here between the like word of mouth build up. So like it was a very organic movement, Barbenheimer, the studio didn't come up with that. Greta Gerwig or Christopher Nolan, that was just somebody made a meme and it blew up, and you're not going to say that that's the reason why these movies are so successful, but that is where the word of mouth comes from. And we don't really get that with too many things nowadays. Like probably Game of Thrones is like one of the last things where it's like, wow, everybody's watching this on Sunday night, or like Succession even. But I mean, I'm sitting here with somebody who didn't watch either of those shows, but so
Yeah.
there is even a difference between TV and movies as well. So like when you're going to the movies and you're seeing people dress up and they're in group photos and just celebrating the fact that they're at the movies like it is going to a sporting event or something like that.
That's what I was going to get at.
It is interesting because you just don't see it anymore. And what I did also like about this whole Barbenheimer movement was that it wasn't one or the other. It was both. And which is also something that you don't get too often, because these would be considered like a classic example of counter programming, because the people who want to see Barbie, people who want to see Oppenheimer are two completely different crowds. And I was looking at some numbers on this video I saw, that the main demographics of each movie are the weakest demographic of the other movie, but it's still having this connection, because there's people who want to go see Barbie and it's sold out, so they see Oppenheimer, and there's people who wanted to see Oppenheimer who are seeing Barbie because they can't get tickets to the one they want to see.
Exactly.
So it's just causing this like I guess not chaos, but the movie theater's chaotic right now when you go.
It's what people thought happened with the thing in Blade Runner. It's what people look back and think.
Imagined, oh, that was so crazy. With
Yeah,
Blade Runner.
how did people pick?
Nobody saw either of them.
Yeah, but I did like that you said that it kind of becomes a sporting event, because I think that's where even the quote unquote film community becomes like a team. And I think like you said, some of the funniest members of that community are people who do memes. Somebody does a meme real quick, and we know we're not the only ones who were excited to watch both movies. And that's a very, like, obviously online meme-based, could be at least kind of persona. But for us, we seriously were very interested in both, And so I think the reality of it, too, is that these are both revered as to, obviously, Christopher Nolan to an even higher degree, but even Greta Gerwig, very well respected. And so I think ultimately for the film buffs, that's what it was. It'd be like Barbie's being made by Greta Gerwig. Of course, the general consensus just sees a Barbie movie, but I feel like for everybody who's a nerd like us, there was a draw in that in itself.
The other kind of movies that have these big weekends are not directed by people where that's the main attraction. So like Star Wars The Force Awakens, it's because it was Star Wars, dude. It's not because it was J.J. Abrams. And the other one I had an example. Endgame and Infinity War. Nobody was going because the Russo brothers directed it. They're going to catch up with their pals in the Marvel Universe, to continue the story that they were already sold.
And even in movies that we love, like for this year, for like Creed 3, nobody really, unless because we got into it, like you're like, oh, somebody else directed these. Like you would think that's not the reason people go. Like,
no one cares who directed the Creed movies. No. There's like Ryan Coogler, and then Michael B. Jordan directed the third one?
Yeah, exactly.
Like who did the second one? I didn't see the second one. Huh.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But to talk about the movies a bit in a general sense, I think that they are both extremely good movies. Oppenheimer is the preferred, I fit the demographic perfectly.
Yeah.
I watched both, but I loved Oppenheimer more than I loved Barbie. But I did think that Greta cooked. You know, I don't think that she uh, really suffered in like that huge jump in the size of the movie. Is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, like that. You know, her previous movies were so small, and for this one to be so big and to also be a gigantic mega hit is really kind of inspiring to see like that step up, because you thought you were going to get that with like these MCU directors supposedly, right? And
Yeah,
not
and
to throw shade at them or whatever, but like Chloe Zhao, right?
Yeah.
Like, you'd think Eternals would be good because she's making it.
That's what
right?
they were trying to
But
get at. Yeah.
I can easily say that Barbie is good because Greta Gerwig directed it. Like, it's tough to say no one else could have done this, but it does feel like that.
Yeah, I agree with you in that sense, just because I think for the Barbie movie, at least, that there's whatever expectation somebody might have had for thinking what was going to happen with it. Greta Gerwig was unique of a director herself, like enough that what she came up with wasn't what I would imagine a Barbie movie would be based on, but still to be able to connect that this is still based on a toy. But so keeping it real, but then at the same time giving us stories that, as a good director that she is, feel very grounded, right? Like what people like about Lady Bird and stuff like that. All of those qualities bled into this mainstream movie, and people might not even know that's the reason they like it, but I know that people know that's the reason they hate it, those stuff, you know?
Yeah. Honestly, it's kind of like the opposite with Christopher Nolan to about Oppenheimer. It's like that movie was made because he's Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
You know, so like they're on two opposite sides of the spectrum on that end.
They
where
asked-
Oppenheimer would not exist unless Christopher Nolan wanted to make it. Barbie would have been made by anybody, but it's like inspired by picking Greta Gerwig. That's like, oh, sick. You know?
Yeah, it's an
Like,
inspired
that should
pick.
be cool. And Barbie is also so open. Like when you were saying right now, like you don't know what to expect. I was open to it because I didn't even know what it could possibly be.
Like I talked to you about this before. Like when I had the PS1 as a kid, there was a demo disc that came with it, and it always had a bunch of games. And there was like a Barbie adventure game, right, which is very marketed towards girls.
It was the one game that they had for girls, probably.
Exactly, but it's in hindsight that is the only thing that I remember that is marketable, that's digital that way. It had a theme. You know, video games have artistic direction, and
They have
obviously
stories sometimes.
it was geared more towards women, but I did like. So what I'm trying to get at is that I don't know. Be like, are they going to try to do this, but in a movie, you know, or what are they going to go for? And when you know that Greta Gerwig signed into it, you just become excited as like kind of somebody who watches a lot of movies, because you know that that's somebody who, if she is given the right type of like control, is going to make something more interesting out of it than what any of the MCU directors, if you give them whoever, you know, made She-Hulk, if you tell her to make a Barbie movie, I think we get something more what you
know
would.
what I was thinking right now is a comparison of what would maybe have me as excited. And it was hard to come up with a 1-for-1 or whatever, but it would be like if they told me that Julia Ducournau was going to make like a Gremlins remake or something.
Yeah.
I'd be like, no way, you know?
Like I know for example for you, like there was a movie that is a perfect example that was heavily carried through that, and it's like David Lowery's Peter Pan, right?
Oh, like why I watched it?
Yeah, but it's
I only watched
based
it because it was
of him.
him,
Yeah. Like, and it's like you
was
want to know
bad
if he's gonna break what you would expect out of a movie like that by bringing in the stuff that you love about all of his other movies. He didn't, obviously.
Yeah,
That's kind of what you said. But some, like the fact that Greta Gerwig did is the difference, you know. Then you don't know if you
Dude,
expect
she
that.
aced it.
Yeah.
Perfect. You gave me everything, because like once you see the Barbie movie, at least Barbie Land, you're like, wow, that's spot on. Like that's perfect. And then the added twist of the plot, once you get into what the story's actually about, you're like, and that's why they hired her.
Yeah, it's grounded again in the stuff that people that really like movies, her movies, Lady Bird, Frances Ha, they relate to. And then you bring it back. That doesn't matter what movie it was. She would have brought that conclusion to any of her movies. And that's when her comments about saying, like, I don't want you guys to think that I made this because I don't want to love this movie like I made my other movies. And for the first time, I feel like that I feel that from the director in this movie. I think she directed this like Barbie was her creation out of her own. And I think something I found interesting just in terms of, I guess, the conversation around this, because there is always the interesting anecdotes the people who do like Oppenheimer get related to like some of the hate that is coming towards Barbie is always related to like the film bro, right? And I always kind of thought it's funny because a lot of the film bros that I come across were, like you said, very the Barbenheimer. Like it was about like, no, I really want to watch both of these, you know. But I think it's really interesting. Like right before we started recording this, like I was looking at a lot of the heavy vouchers for Barbie are obviously like feminist because there's a very, don't want to spoil anything, but
you can go to Ben Shapiro if you want to know what he's talking
yeah, exactly. You're like, really funny. But it's always like, oh, the dudes who watch The Godfather and Fight Club and like this don't like, of course they're not gonna like this movie. This movie's not for you. But
I like Apocalypse Now. I would never like Barbie.
And like I just was laughing because before this I was like, maybe The Godfather is a better movie than Barbie. Like it's not like, so because I like The Godfather and I didn't like Barbie, it must be because I'm a misogynist, right? Yeah. It's not. You can't just see that. There's people who are not gonna like anything IP. And like especially the message that obviously it ends up going towards. There's people who are just completely turned off, but they think that's propaganda. That's fine. That's their opinion. But I do think it's weird that people who supposedly don't like the movie are the film bros. And then I'm like, I don't know, the most that I've come across really like both of these movies.
Yeah, I mean, why not give her a chance to cook? It's not like it was just some director that's like an industry plant you never heard of or whatever. It's like, this is a well-respected director, so why not give her a chance to do something that could be like respectable? And that is what she did. And I kind of hesitated to say it earlier. I started speaking and then I was like, you know what, I'm not going to say it yet, but I do feel comfortable in saying it honestly, that I do think that she has the ability to, much like someone like Jordan Peele, to kind of have that like Spielberg touch, that James Cameron touch, where you can make these big, huge, mega blockbusters, but they're also filled with like real emotions and, real human conflict. Well, in this case, real Barbie conflict.
Yeah.
But, like these endearing movies that are actually saying something and have messages, and you can tell that they were created by people who really love them, even if it's silly or, blue cat people, whatever. Like, they are taking that as serious as it needs to be. And that's when you can give something like Barbie respect, because, like, I can watch this and tell that she cared. And you don't always get that in IP. So then, yeah, the Hot Wheels movie, I assume, is going to be cursed media. You know? Because I'm like, who's really going to come? They're like dark, gritty Hot Wheels. Like, so let me guess, it's going to be like the worst Mad Max meets Death Race movie you've ever seen, probably. Because I most likely won't believe that whoever made it really loves it. And an example of that right now that's going around is that Gran Turismo movie. Like, that feels so cursed. And like Neil Blomkamp is directing that, and he's had his ups and downs, and this kind of feels like a last ditch effort, honestly. But it just looks cursed, You're like, what the fuck is this?
I get you. Even though it's supposed to be based on something that did happen, it just seems like the IP bleeds more.
It's like the Flamin' Hot movie. Like, this is cursed.
I think a big thing though too is like, because me and you go to the movie so much, is that the trailer in itself is not selling me the Barbie doll. It's selling me the movie.
Yes, that's a good point.
And like all of, like you're saying, the Hot Wheels or the Gran Turismo is, Gran Turismo, Hot Wheels.
Kinda.
Like, you know what I mean? Be like, what? And then like, well, what is the background story to Hot Wheels? Right? Why are they so hot?
Yeah. What makes the wheels hot?
Is it the speed?
Yeah. Is it the friction?
So it does feel like those would be part of a joke that we would have made 5 years ago about the universe that they would make. And I even, for example, there's the whole Noah Baumbach is always tied with her, right? And like they co-wrote this together, but
pretty sure they're married now.
No, there's a whole conversation about that too. About they don't say they're each other's boyfriend and girlfriend, because that sounds like they met each other like 2 or 3, like, a couple months ago. But they don't say they're married because they're not married, so they just call each other their partners.
Okay.
Yeah, so
it's complicated.
Yeah, exactly. But I was just gonna say, like, for example, what you're talking about, the Spielberg stuff, is stuff that I ended up like, why? And I don't know how, because you watched it in a weird way, but like White Noise, a lot of that stuff that's written there ends up bleeding into Barbie. And like, I think that's stuff that most people wouldn't expect out of a Barbie movie. Even me, as knowing the directors and what kind of style that they are, like, I didn't know how they would input that type of direction. And for her to pull it off, I think is it's just impressive. Like you said, whenever someone does make an IP movie, I cheer for the movie. I mean, we went to go watch Rampage. We wanted Rampage to be good.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, I want every movie I watch to be good, whether it's IP or not.
So to see somebody successfully pull it off, I think
if you
is
can
worth
make it
cheering.
good, then good.
I mean, the movie is just funny,
good
right?
for it existing.
That's what we were saying. Like, it's just funny.
Yeah.
I mean, and laughs are just worth a lot. Sorry.
Yeah, like, and if Barbie makes me laugh, then oh well.
It's a great movie.
Like, I'm gonna be sitting here like Oppenheimer after and like pondering, like, no, it's my fault they made Hot Wheels. It's because I went and saw Barbie
On opening
Right?
day.
Yeah, I mean, like, but that doesn't mean that you get to make 25 shit movies now in your universe. A movie I wanted to bring up too, it's like on the opposite side of the spectrum, where I'm like, low key, this movie could be fire. Is the Barney movie, because it's Daniel Kaluuya.
Yeah, like, what's up
You're
with
like,
that?
okay, that sounds dumb as fuck.
But
right?
there has to be like,
But it's like, but what is he going to do? That's like, wow,
what is he
he
cooking?
really cooked, you know?
What is he cooking?
And like, obviously, it could be hit or miss. Not just because it's Daniel Kaluuya. I'm gonna be like, oh no, it was good. It was good.
He just has enough rep for me to believe in him right off the first project if he's gonna do something
He's
like
got
that.
enough good credit with me.
Yeah.
You know? Like, he's made Nope, dude. He made Get Out. He was in this. He was that. You know.
He has enough credit where I'm just
Judas
gonna
and the Black Messiah. Dude.
let him cook. You know.
He already
Like,
gave me Nope and Judas and the Black Messiah and Get Out. He can make one for him. You know. And if it's Barney, I don't know why it's Barney, but
yeah, and then that's what becomes.
But I'm pretty
appealing.
sure I'm gonna find out when I'm watching the movie. Like, oh,
Oh.
that's why he made Barney.
The purple dinosaur.
He was my only friend.
He was special.
All right, so to talk about the movies a bit in more detail, Oppenheimer. Let's start there because that is the one we saw first. I mean, hey, as much as I like Barbie and I'm rooting for this movie, be fucking for real. Of course, I saw Oppenheimer first. Are you serious?
Yeah, I mean that was. We obviously, like we said, we try to make the trek to Mecca. We wanted to watch in the original 70 millimeter as our father Christopher Nolan wanted us to, but we live in California, guys, and Los Angeles is the only place that has that theater. So everybody that is a real annoying cinema fan lives there. So of course they're gonna fill this up.
Yeah, I mean, even today,
My peers.
So we're a week removed from watching it. That's why this episode is kind of late as well. So, I mean, most people have already seen it, but we even tried to book a ticket a week from now to go see the 70 millimeter one, and it's just not, it doesn't look like it's going to happen, right? But I want it to happen, and maybe we'll get an extended run, because what else are they really going to put in that one, right? Like, do you know if with the Universal City Walk one, that's the correct theater, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do you know if because they have that 70 millimeter capability, like they'll just run Oppenheimer as long as possible, even though like the theater that we go to most commonly in Orange County is only going to run it for 5 weeks. It's like, will they still have it for 10 weeks? 15 weeks.
I would imagine so, especially like I don't have it based off of anything that I've looked up, but I would imagine so because at least because of how packed it is too, and I think at the end of the day, the movie theater wants to sell tickets, so it's gonna keep something around. You know, if something like Avatar can get a new re-release run after a certain time, I think a movie like Oppenheimer can get an extended run at least in where it's being shown. Probably, honestly, Christopher Nolan's personal cut of it.
Yeah, that'd be sick, right?
Yeah.
So Oppenheimer is the 12th movie by Christopher Nolan. It stars Cillian Murphy and basically every famous person in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Who he has worked with before, and some newcomers. Much like our last episode with Wes Anderson, Christopher Nolan has gotten to that point where he can basically cast anybody in a 10-second role, and they're going to give the best performance they've ever given. Whether that be Josh Peck,
Megan.
shivering in his boots before he presses the button, or this was kind of out of nowhere, but Casey Affleck making a surprise return to screen. And even one way or another, how you feel about him, that was a really, really good performance. For the 5 minutes he was on screen. But it is the Cillian Murphy show. It's the Robert Downey Jr. show, and they were fucking fantastic. I also thought that Matt Damon and Jason Clarke gave wonderful performances as well. I thought Jason Clarke kind of stole the movie, like he dominated those scenes he was in with Oppenheimer, and I know that's the way it's written, but I believed it, that he's this guy interrogating Oppenheimer, and it's just really good shit, And then even Rami Malek with the surprise performance the last 15 minutes, just coming in and saving the day.
And he said, where again, like you said, because this is so based off history, I think there is obviously a lot of important characters that existed in real life, and to be able to show that impact of how much they had to do with such obviously an important time in history, for Christopher Nolan to be able to depict that so well, even by just going back through the black and white film and the timeline. I think that's when we talk about and really vouch for in the podcast is like really understanding the language of cinema and being able to portray this stress in history or Oppenheimer's mind at this time in the movie. The whole 3 hours just really felt like we were inside his mind, which was just assumptions,
Yeah, I like what you said right now about how this is such an important moment in time with so many important people involved and how many people are tied to this thing. I think it's, it makes a lot of sense to get so many big name actors to play these people, because I think when you give an actor like Rami Malek, who has won an Oscar, you give him a small role that is so vital, it kind of emphasizes like how important that person was in real life as well, and it's like that guy's the 15th guy in this story, and he was also a very big important person who was making a lot of fucking decisions, and even in this story he's only in it for 5 minutes, but like how many things happened because of that man that affected the rest of the country.
Bro, they throwed us an MCU bone. They're like, who was the guy who... John F. Kennedy.
Yeah. We're getting MCU drops.
Yeah.
They're like, who was he? Kennedy.
They're like,
John F.
you know
Kennedy.
who that is. Yeah. And you know what happened because he did this,
that is one thing I will say why Oppenheimer, I think it's a five bagger, but honestly, some of the writing can be a little... which is always Christopher Nolan's, I think, weakest skill.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying like he should or anything. I just think that he understands the visual language so well and how to create cinema and atmosphere and tension. But that doesn't mean he's the best writer of dialogue. So like that was like, wow, that was as cheap as when Kingsman 2 was like Hitler.
I did actually kind of want to go back to what you said about being able to pull such good actors for such small roles. Because, like, I always butcher his name, but, like, David Dasmalchian.
Oh, yeah.
Weird.
Dude.
The weirdo.
He's been in, like, every Christopher Nolan movie.
Always just, like, why does he always just bang, right? I'll be there, right?
Man. Huh.
Always. And I was like,
Polka Dot Man.
Yeah. I like him a lot.
He's in Star Wars, I believe.
We get Jack Quaid here, right?
Yeah.
And it's like we scream and just, like, again, really good performance.
You know what's funny about Jack Quaid? It was like, I don't know if you saw the tweet, and it was like, Christopher Nolan saw that man and said, he needs a pair of bongos in his hands.
And then Casey Affleck, you brought him up. Alex Wolff, right? We started becoming like he has. I like his selection of movies that he's in. He knows how to expose himself to be like, look, Christopher Nolan put me in this role.
Christopher Nolan,
Hereditary, Ari Aster.
Be like, this guy, come on, he knows.
Pig.
Yeah, Pig. Be like, he has made a lot of smart choices.
Yeah, I mean, we vouch for actors like this in the podcast, so I noticed him. I
noticed, yeah.
So, and then Gary Oldman, man, just completely like, hey, here's Gary Oldman.
Dude, doing the weirdest accent I've ever seen.
Yeah,
I gotta go back and see if Truman actually sounded like that, because what the fuck was that?
Yeah, but it like you're so involved into the movie. Like when I saw him, I was like, "Is that Gary?" It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and another one like Alden and how do you say his name?
Alden Ehrenreich.
Yeah,
yeah,
my boy from Solo. Got done
dirty.
Hey, that's what you're talking about, like performance.
Hey, he was fucking garbage in Cocaine Bear, but so was Cocaine Bear, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then which one that I always notice because of what you said, they'll just do it is Kenneth Branagh.
Oh yeah,
and like this was directing and stuff. Like, yeah, I'll be an Oppenheimer. Yeah,
they canceled. He's like, today we don't make the mustache movie. I go to Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
I must go pay homage.
For Island.
Before he comes back to make more mustache movies. Huh?
Yeah. So I just wanted, those are some like, any of these characters, they'd be another movie, they would at least be the supporting actor.
Yeah. And, speaking of MCU drops, which you mentioned, I just kept waiting for Albert Einstein to do his famous iconic look, right? I just kept waiting for it. I was like, please. Right?
Oh. I guess one more, though, too. Benny Safdie, because I did really enjoy his performance.
Wonderful performance.
Yeah.
I mean, it's redundant to say that.
Of course. Another director. Look, that's in there.
Was really good. like, but they were.
No, yeah, but it's just the way you're talking about, like, and Emily Blunt,
Great performance.
sheesh.
Florence Pugh, great performance.
There was a.
We're probably leaving somebody out too who we really liked.
Yeah, you know, we'll get. I do think it will, because it's amazing, and it's not like we're bringing any highlight to this, that this cast is just packed to the brim. But like, there was a certain like thing that I noticed, and a lot of people were analyzing it, and I think I just wanted to bring it up because I think it kind of highlights this aspect that we're talking about, is that there's really important scenes where they're interrogating Cillian Murphy as Oppenheimer, and Emily Blunt's his wife in the movie, but this is Emily Blunt, and for a lot of the movie, she's just in the background, you know, and like, you don't really put an actress like that in the background, and then kind of sometimes if the director's not very good or the movie's not very good, they'll kind of blend away because that's what you're purposely trying to do. But in this movie, it's like you notice her in the back, and it's like you feel the emotions that she's even going through, even though she's not
saying all that much.
Anything, and she's just in the back showing somebody who might be stressed, and we later kind of find out that she's just an alpha. And so she's got a lot of ideas going through her mind, a lot of frustrations. And I think Christopher Nolan, to be able to, that's why Emily Blunt's going to play this role, because this still, although might be a background character at one point in the movie, has a lot of resonance to where this movie's heading.
She, to me, symbolized like a character who was like the human version of the bomb, where it's like just simmering. And then in the last, even after the bomb goes off, they're like, okay, well now, but what about with her? And then boom, like for the last 30, 40 minutes of the movie, she just becomes like, honestly, not like the co-main character of the movie. And it's just fantastic, you know, because it's like you said, you're like, wow, they're not wasting her, but you know, you'd think she'd get more screen time than this, right? But she comes through and gives just a hell of a performance with the time she does have.
Exactly. And I think it just speaks volumes for Christopher Nolan to know it's a decision to, even though the part he could have ran with somebody who's less known for the part and they would have been effective. But I just think to note for it to be stellar and come out, and for us to be sitting here acknowledging her part, even though her part is in the shadows for a lot of the time, as I think, again, his knowing how to direct these people and knowing what the roles require for us to be like, okay, this is really good.
Yeah, I mean, other than the extras, I can't think of, if they had a speaking line, they were like a really famous person who's been in a lot of movies, you know?
Yeah.
And if they didn't have a speaking line, it probably was an extra, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's how stacked this cast is, even down to the people who had 4 or 5 lines throughout the 3 hours. Was somebody you're like, wow, I've seen them in like 10 things. You
like you said, like Asteroid City. It's just very similar to like Hong Chow is there for like 2 minutes.
Surprise! They were my 2 favorite movies of the year, right? The ones that have the most actors.
Which is usually in past years has been it's not going to be very good when there's been like that many A-listers.
Well, because hey, the David Russells of the world can't handle this many A-listers at once.
It's true.
Even someone like Quentin Tarantino or Paul Thomas Anderson doesn't work with this many A-listers at once.
At once, yeah.
You know?
That's just not the type of movies that they make. But that's why I think it's worth highlighting that Oppenheimer, like you said, it's Christopher Nolan is so revered that any of them will stop doing what they need to do to be in this movie.
You know, I also think that Denis Villeneuve is someone who's on that same wavelength of where, like, you watch Dune and you're like, every character in here is getting like precious screen time and using the hell out of it. And he really did cast like a bunch of, like, when you look at the Dune spreadsheet, you're like, holy shit, look at all these names on here, right?
The Dune agenda,
and,
guys.
yeah, I'm spreading the Dune agenda early. The spice melange. But yeah, yes. I just think of those 2 directors as kind of similar on that trajectory, and it's like, it's no surprise that they can handle this many A-list actors while also making movies that are gigantic in scope and scale in like a way that no one else is doing. Jordan Peele could be on his way after Nope, but he could also choose to make a small movie after this, I don't think that's what he's going to do, but I'm just saying, like, these are the only 2 guys who are like, every movie I make is going to be the biggest movie I've ever made.
And it is interesting for me that I feel the exact same way that you're saying right now about Nolan, because part prior to Oppenheimer come out. And again, I like Tenet, you know, but I so superiorly was like on Villeneuve. Be like Villeneuve is like is going to be on his own. Like everything he's been dropping is so good, and then Nolan drops this and just kind of really reminds you, be like why, like the Dark Knight or like Tenet is him taking a chance, him trying to be different, but then when he's in his bag, you're like, oh my god, because like it's just this movie, the way that it's made, only he could make it. This is his signature. And now I'm like, no, like you're saying, talking about them, like, no, it's both of them. They're both like, they're who you look up to. They're the saints right now. Be like, you know, they're
For big giant cinema. Be like, they're the guys.
They're the ones who like they started doing indie stuff. They went through the tribulations, and now they're trusted by everybody. And as of right now, they haven't dropped the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think either of them really are like Stanley Kubrick, but that's always who I think of when I think of those two directors.
Yeah, at least
where I'm like, they need to be revered that same way, like as modern versions of this type of filmmaker, right?
Yeah, and like Spielberg, like you said, kids, you know, you have tiers of it, right? I mean, like we really like Martin Scorsese too, but even Martin Scorsese is not Spielberg's level.
Movies you've ever seen.
Yeah, and some of the biggest movies that you've really seen, people don't like, actually. Like, you know, like even like The Irishman, like people think they don't like, but then Villeneuve, Nolan, Spielberg, their biggest movies are the movies people love the most, because they appeal to the masses, but also still pull from the language of cinema the most, or the best.
Yeah, I mean, they make like the most movie a movie could be.
Exactly.
Know? Like they just know what they're doing. And Christopher Nolan, of course, does not disappoint. I know Tenet could be seen there as a lower point, but there's so much that goes into that movie that is not related to the movie at all. You know, like with COVID and everything, and how Warner Brothers decided to release it. And Christopher Nolan, I also think somewhat of his pride getting in the way of like, well, I'll be the guy who smashes the doors open and the movies are fucking back, baby, right?
Talk about the allegations. Talk about his brother.
Yeah, Matthew Oppenheimer. We'll get to that. That's a fun piece of lore with Christopher Nolan. They're like, oh, that's why all his movies are about like handsome spy assassins. Oh, it's literally his brother.
Oh, that's just so I had to bring it up. Talk about the allegations.
But yeah, with Christopher Nolan, I do think that Tenet is not really a misstep, but I just think it's a big, huge mess, you know, on top of being a confusing movie that is more of a vibe check than it is a plot, you know? And like, I don't think that's a wrong accusation to make. I think he would be honest and say that, yeah, like I was vibing, like I was moving, you know? Like, yeah. I wanted to make something where I was like, I understand it, but I don't know if everybody else is going to understand it. And it was one hell of a temporal pincer, you know?
And hell of a temporal pincer.
This movie, the visuals, I mean, so insane. I think it goes without saying that there's nothing we can say that is going to explain it better than just going to watch this movie. And I did feel like I reverted back to Monkey while watching this movie. I was like, ooh, you know what I mean? Like I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was so beautiful, so gorgeous. You could really fool me that there's no CGI shots in this movie, because I'm like, how the fuck did you do that? Right?
I think, yeah, I mean the flames, right?
Yeah, how the hell did you do that?
Why does it look like that?
And even if you tell me how you did it, I'm like, that still doesn't make sense.
That's the most 4K I've seen in my life.
That
like
was
a flames,
K,
like,
boy.
oh my god.
That's 4 billion K.
This is like I was the meme of Mr. like a Vince McMahon, like when this like, you know, Oppenheimer movie, nice, directed by Christopher Nolan, shot by Hoyte van Hoytema,
scored by Ludwig van Goran,
yeah, exactly. And that's where I wanted to go to too. Was, I mean, I think I might like this more than, like, it's up there with Interstellar.
Oh, okay. So why is Interstellar your favorite Christopher Nolan movie?
No, the score.
Oh, the score. Oh, dude, yeah.
The score for this movie is up there.
The score is insane. It's literally the guy at the piano on fire.
And I've been just holding on to this as the biggest point I think I wanted to bring up of this movie, and I think it's why I love it so much, or why I think it's my favorite of the year, is for most part of this movie, for the 3 hours, there's a score going on. And even the moments of, and oh my God, like, has tension ever really been used better with a score that's like, it's just like you said, like on fire this whole time. It's just perfectly matched. There's moments of anxiety and stress that the score just puts you in your own head of like, that's what I feel like when I'm that stressed.
Sitting there thinking.
Yeah, and like again, as a respect as somebody like historian, or if you're into really science, like this is a fucking mad genius that we're talking about. Like his anxieties are not regular people anxieties. So what better way to put that with a score that is just rips for no absolute, and it just keep going in these parts where there's dialogue going on, and that's like, you know, sound issues that movies have now, but like. It becomes such an integral part of the movie, just like Interstellar, where you identify certain scenes with the sounds. And I think my favorite one there was like his highest anxiety was when he was listening to the people's footsteps when they were so excited for him. You know?
When they would stomp for him.
And it was the one that was shaking it. That sounded more like what you thought before the movie the bomb was going to sound like to him than even the bomb was, or the Trinity Project. And again, just like that's not an expectation you would have going into the movie. Obviously, you know, they're going to show his side of things, but to just effortless, or like to be able to pull it off so well, it's incomparable to anything I've seen this year.
You know, I think my favorite part of the movie was the moments that were just pure cinema, no talking, just him thinking and visualizing the bomb in his head, and then the sequences of what he's seeing in his head, and like what he thinks two atoms splitting looks like. You know what I mean? Just like all of that stuff. Like that was so just pure movie magic that like can only exist because of movie making. Like you would never be able to portray this in another way, and it puts you in the mindset that like, yeah, I could never fathom what it would be like to create a nuclear bomb, but I can. Because of Oppenheimer, I can get close to even scratching the surface of how someone could feel who did something like this, you know?
I also like, I think one of my favorite things in the movie, just where this kind of evokes some of the trippier stuff that we like, and, you know, Christopher Nolan, all of our favorite directors like movies like that, and sometimes they slip it in there, is when he starts seeing Florence Pugh's character, like how she killed himself, and like that's his bug, and like, cause he's there, he's seeing it, you know what I mean? But like in the movie, that's not something that you would expect for it to be shown in that way. And again, like with the score going on at the same time, and the perfect way that they showed you the relationship that they had, and the tension between the kind of people that they were, just really again puts you in the mindset of this heavy anxiety of he's being, you know, persecuted for things, and also the other side of his brain being like, what did I do? And the continuous movie being like Oppenheimer, the person's drama, and Oppenheimer, the scientist's drama.
Yeah. You know what was a movie I kept comparing it to, actually, now that I've had more time to think about it, is There Will Be Blood. I found it to be very similar to it in structure, because it bounces around in time, and it's the story of this man in the desert with this incredible power and this sway over people, and the world that he created, and the you know, the what comes with that, you know, and like what you sacrifice by being somebody like this. And I thought that was like, these are kind of like some of the keys that made these both fantastic movies. And it's not a surprise that Christopher Nolan and Paul Thomas Anderson were the people to use those things. But I honestly think they'd be a really good double feature with each other. I
think those are the stuff that...
if you want to watch movies about power, watch those two movies.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's the Americana, right?
Yeah,
that's like what they talked about. But I can't think of his name right now for the life of me. Mr. and Mrs. McCabe, like we talked
Robert
about. Like,
Altman.
Yeah, like
McCabe and Mrs. Miller.
Yeah, so Robert Altman, like these directors are pulling from like Robert Altman again is obviously very respected by your favorite directors, and like it's about what you're talking about, the this person. It's these narrative stories that follow people that are very specific situations, and the tensions and the anxieties that those people might feel, but that we could tie into because we all have those feelings. And obviously Paul Thomas Anderson, that is his biggest thing. And Christopher Nolan is still, obviously, they're different, but I still think that factor that you're talking about, Nolan pulls from as well. And I think that he like Nolan was openly saying like he loves 007. You know what I mean? Like he's like
Yeah.
I embarrassingly rip off those movies, and it's like that's what. Again, there's this whole like gentleman code to these movies, right? And obviously Tenet, I think, is the one that kind of shows that the most. Him just kind of trying to make his own 007 movie. But I think, again, is the tied to the Americana and this like ingrandization of a character in their movies. They're the best at it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think the other reason too that I like those two movies so much and they remind me of each other is because I really like movies that are about people who are very good at what they do.
Yeah.
Because it makes you feel like this is the only way I could even start to understand this type of person, right? And obviously, it's not the realistic version of them or whatever, but you can't help but be just amazed that somebody like Oppenheimer existed. You know, you're like, this is fucking crazy.
Yeah.
That this guy had this in his mind and was able to control 4,000. Like, you know, he was in charge of 4,000 people that created the most important thing that was ever been created.
And that's just something that always piques all our human interest about the closest thing to a god figure, right? I mean, Elvis was a success because of the same thing, the movie, because of what you said. Like, these are close characters. These are people who existed. They were the closest to being just
Like
past human.
idolized.
Yeah. And
Like being like being more than just a person.
and we will never know that. So movies, directors that read up on the things that they love, they're able to portray to us what we would imagine would be the anxiety of being in somebody's shoes like that. Like you're saying, like an Oppenheimer, like somebody who is always going to be remembered because they actually did things that are going to be, you know, they
changed
happen.
the course of the world, not just someone's life.
Yeah, like everybody's world.
Yeah.
And like
people born in 500 years have to worry about this.
Exactly. And we also get, you know, bats. There's people who we get bad movies about characters that we love too. You know, there's a lot of bad movies of, you know, like for example, like The Doors. You know, like The Doors is somebody who highly revered. Some people like do not like that movie. Yeah. So it's not always just because it's about this, so people are gonna love it. I do always think that the director that truly loves the subject and is actually very interested in it and are the ones that pull it off. And Christopher Nolan here, just again because he's so versed in his craft, he took interest in this and he could only pull it off because he's him. Like you said, when they signed him, they didn't tell him you're gonna make a movie about this, this, and this. He said, give us 3 movies and then they could be whatever you want. And not everybody gets that like blank.
Yeah, I mean, isn't it insane that one of the biggest movies of the year is a 3-hour biopic about the guy who made the nuclear bomb?
Exactly.
And it's about him. It isn't about the nuclear bomb even. It's just about him. And that alone is insane. Like even, yeah, like when Steven Spielberg does make the biggest movies of all time, it wasn't about the characters. It was about the shark. It was about E.T. Like, yeah, and the little boy. E.T. and the little boy, but it's about E.T.
Yeah.
You know, like, it wasn't really that much about Elliot. It was just kind of like, oh, well, that's the side character, you know? But these movies, like, this is quote unquote a boring movie. It's supposed to be a boring movie. But why even make this movie on this scale? You know,
exactly.
Only because Christopher Nolan could get away with that.
Exactly.
Well, a few others, right? But, you know, that's the kind
One
of
of the
power
few.
he has. Even like, you know, Stanley Kubrick when he made Dr. Strangelove, it wasn't about that president. It was about nuclear like anxiety.
Like, I mean, Martin Scorsese, Killers of the Flower Moon is him getting that thing that Christopher Nolan already has. Martin Scorsese had to fight after
Martin
so
Scorsese's
many,
almost 90 years old.
after so many, you know, things that people are like, you fucked it up. Like, no, you're washed. You know, Christopher Nolan already gets given that. Jordan Peele kind of already gets given that.
Martin Scorsese hasn't had real hype around a movie since Wolf of
Wall Street, yeah.
Which is like the movies in between are extremely good.
And it's and there it would be based off of like people feel that way probably because of Leonardo DiCaprio too. Yeah, exactly. Like they forget that he directed that. Well, obviously we don't, but people forget that that's why that movie's good.
Yeah. So yeah, like you said, Christopher Nolan just has a power that not many other people have, and he uses it for what I see as good.
Yeah.
You know, like I do think that he's a very important figure in cinema. Like you said, he's one of our like patron saints. Like it's interesting to be a Christopher Nolan hater or whatever, but I also kind of see it I've always liked his movies. I have always thought that he is a very interesting director. They're just not my favorite type of movie, you know? So like there's nothing wrong with it. It's like I don't like, I don't think Paul Thomas Anderson's better. I just prefer his type of movie, you know? Or like even like Stanley Kubrick. I just prefer Stanley Kubrick's style of movies, even though Christopher Nolan kind of makes them in, well, it doesn't really make them in a similar light. I just think that there's just a certain kind of like technical
They're
genius
comparable.
there that's why they are so connected or whatever.
They're comparable.
But you know, he's just not my favorite director. But there could be a time and day where he is, you know, because he has made some of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, I mean this is one of my favorite movies.
Like I
think,
rewatched Interstellar a couple weeks ago. Fucking banger, bro. Like, hey, be like, you know, sometimes Christopher Nolan's like, my movies, if you think they have plot holes, it's because I want you to feel them, not to understand them. But, you know, when I'm watching Interstellar, and I loved it the first time I saw it in IMAX, and now I'm watching it 9 years later, something like that, and I'm a dad now. Be like, so when I watch this movie, and you trying to tell me that that love transcends space and time, and that is unrealistic, like, to me, it's not. You know what I mean? Like, I understand what he's saying there because I have felt that now. Be like, so, like, to me, Interstellar is one of the great movies of all time. Like, I think it's great that we have these 3 amazing space movies, or maybe even 4. It's like Solaris in 2001 and Interstellar, and maybe you can throw in Ad Astra, you know? It's like, wow, like, these are just fucking great movies. And like you said, that score in Interstellar, right? Matthew McConaughey just giving this wonderful performance, just all of the technical stuff. It's just, this is what he does. And I'm saying all this to say that it's like, if you can't see past, oh, the movies don't always make sense, and enjoy and appreciate his greatness, then how can you really say you love movies? You know, like, he doesn't have to be your favorite director, but if you can't appreciate what he does for the art form, then you've lost the plot.
Exactly.
You're the one who's having plot holes.
Because like again, like Denis Villeneuve, like they gave the keys to somebody who loved the Dune books, and look what he made of it. And isn't that forwarding cinema to a whole other? We live in an IP world now, but that doesn't mean the IP has to be bad.
That's completely true. Yeah,
like the movies, you know what I mean. The IP in itself, obviously, like we've talked about, like evil.
The Flaming Hot Cheetos movie is bad.
It's evil.
Like,
it is
evil. That's an
it's
evil thing.
And it'd be like, you know, an IP exists because people who own it want to make money off of it. But that doesn't mean that you can't make IP. IP is IP because it means something to the culture. So show it. Show why people care about this so much.
I'm glad you say this because I do think now is a good time to transition to Barbie.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the perfect example of what makes Barbie so good.
Yeah.
Is that it's like, look, this is why Barbie is an iconic piece of Americana that will be forever ingrained. And not to compare it too much to Oppenheimer, but it's like the effects of Barbie and what it's done to women and just society and everything. Like, who could have ever thought a doll would have done that? Right?
It's a bomb.
It's a very important piece of America.
It's a bomb in its own way. No, I agree though.
It nuked women's minds forever.
Yeah. And yeah, it's even guys. You know what I mean?
Guys. Like, it really is important. And I know that sounds stupid, and I'm not saying like, no, you need to take the Barbie movie seriously, but to act like it has no actual cultural impact and like it just got made because it's a toy. Like, no, Battleship got made because it's a toy.
I mean, okay, like, because we spoke about the Great Master, the obvious connection here, Greta Gerwig used 2001 as reference in the beginning, and they showed why. Greta Gerwig did a whole thing that they did it the exact same way Stanley Kubrick did it.
Didn't
except
look as good, gotta say.
Because I'll tell you why. Because they said they used the now equal what would be the projector screen. But I was like, you should have used the one he used. Because I'm like, how does that one still look better than whatever is the modern equivalent of it? Whatever. We're not here
that the modern version looks way worse.
Yeah. And be like, oh, look, the infinite Ks in film make this look even crazier, right? Anyways, we're not here to of course it wasn't going to look as good. But I wanted to touch upon how that scene actually is important to what you're saying of the impact of Barbie, because that's what it's used for in the movie, to talk about that dolls before her were just for girls to be like, you're a mom. And it very points to what culturally everybody in the world was letting little girls know, be like, you're going to be a mom. And up until Barbie happened, you know, the whole story, go watch the movie. It's like, it changed girls' perception of what they can be. And isn't that just as importantly implications on the world than a bomb.
Yeah, I mean, when you throw the little baby doll in the air and it becomes a Barbie on the way down, like that really was a moment that that shifted. Like, things are different now. Little girls imagine being astronauts because Barbie's an astronaut.
Yeah.
Like, not because they've seen one. Like, you had to make a doll for them to even have a fucking role model.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to touch upon too. It's like we're talking about a time when, like, 30 years before that is Ragdoll Ann, which is just ideally, pieces of fabric.
This is tying it back to a whole other movie, but like, because I said the astronaut thing, I thought of that movie Hidden Figures, which is about the 3 African American women who helped get them up to space or whatever, and how they were completely ignored for all that time. Like, that's why Barbie had to exist, even.
Yeah.
Because look, like, here's this important moment in history that just got erased.
They're like, nope, let's not talk about that.
1, they're girls. 2, they're not boys. And 3, they're girls.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man.
Yeah, so we're not gonna talk about that.
Yeah, because I'm not here for that bullshit. Like, that's stupid as fuck. Why are you getting this pressed over a movie about a doll, right?
Yeah, but I think Greta Gerwig understands tackling the subject matter. How did she tackle Lady Bird? Is the relationship between a mom and her daughter, and everything else falls in place. And I think that's how they approach movies. When her and Noah were writing this movie, I think that's the resonating. But what is the actual real impact of Barbie? Why is Barbie IP? Why is Barbie Mattel's probably their best toy ever? Why? And it's tied into all of those real things that have implications on culture. So we make the movies to project those values. The movie can't be bad because, I mean, it could have been, but it's like it's going to deliver because we're already thinking to a degree that something that already it happened. This has this effect on people. It's not we assume people care about Hot Wheels or we assume people care about Gran Turismo this much. No, people cared about Barbie this much.
That's a good point. No one gives a fuck about Gran Turismo
that much.
No.
and if you do, be like, you're like one of 10 people who do.
Yeah.
And like Barbie, like you're talking about
the Gran Turismo subreddit. That's about as many people who might go watch that movie.
Yeah.
And even then, most people will probably be like, didn't get to see it. Might watch it when it's at home.
Like, I mean, like, that's like, it reminds because you brought it up, like Morpheus. Like, when people would go to the opening and they had the shirts and, like, they were vouching because they love Morpheus. But that was the only people who really wanted this movie.
Morbius,
my bad.
Morpheus.
Morbius. Yeah, like there was people there who were like big. They were big comic book fans of Morbius. Like, but how many of those people exist?
Not that many.
Not that
That's
many.
why it became a meme.
Because those people loved it because they've been waiting for that movie.
There was a couple people out there who probably really did love that movie. They're like, finally, they fucking made one for me, right?
Yeah.
Like, then everybody else is like, watch how we're gonna trick this studio into thinking we like this movie.
Yeah, I'd be like, which is just funny.
They made it bomb twice.
That's so good.
Oh, that's so funny. But
Yep.
we also can't act like it's not also this extremely funny, hilarious, great time blockbuster popcorn movie that is just fluff and frills. It's half and half. It's a mixed bag between both. But both types of movie that it is, I think she walks the line perfectly, and it's just as funny as it is like a real message, that's like actually trying to say something, which is you don't have to. You could make this Barbie movie and not try to say anything at all. So, you could make it like a Disney movie. It's like they made the Jungle Cruise. They aren't trying to say nothing. They're just like, the Jungle Cruise, right? So it wouldn't be the massive success that it is if it wasn't done with so much care.
Yeah. Again, be like who she picks as certain roles in this movie. It's not the cast isn't as deep, but not in terms of the weight, but even the significant players here. Maybe just the daughter is the only person I don't specifically know, but everybody is also known in other things.
Yeah, I mean Issa Rae, America Ferrera, Margot Robbie, of course, Ryan Gosling, of course, Simu Liu is like, that's probably the one where you're like, what's he doing here?
Like America Ferrera to me is like, I know maybe people don't see her as like, but she's been around for a long time, so I'm like, I recognize her when she's in things.
Yeah, and she gives one of the great performances in this movie.
So
Ryan Gosling is great as the comedic performance, but Margot Robbie's performance along with America Ferrera is like, this is why we're here. This is actually what's important. Like, yes, he's Knuff, but
of course.
It's not what this movie's about.
It's not about Ken.
It's about America Ferrera and Margot Robbie. You know, like these are our main characters, and that's what made it a good movie, dude.
I just thought about it right now. It's like this is kind of a random place to insert this. It's about the movie, but the people who watch it and still didn't get the right message from it.
Yeah,
You're oh my god! I just thought it was funny that we had that like happen in real life where somebody really loved the movie.
Yeah, you know, and I know we said we didn't want to talk about the stupid conversations going on around this movie, but don't you think it's like, wow, are you really that stupid that you watched a movie where you're like, okay, in Barbie Land, the women are the men, right? And the men are the women. And then they come to the real world, and then you're mad that they acknowledge that the real world is like
it would be the opposite of it.
Like the real world is the opposite of Barbie Land. You're like, duh.
Like, hey,
don't you think it's crazy though? You're like, dude, you've missed the whole point for the 60 years or whatever that Barbie existed. That like that little girls could do what they want, and then you're like, just now you're like, this shit's kind of woke, dog.
Brother, she lived in fantasy land. She came to real land. It'd be like in fantasy land, the women were the men. Because you know what's not, it doesn't happen in real life. Like, you're not watching this movie. You just hate it. Big brother.
Do you not live in reality? That's why I'm like, this isn't even like saying anything brave. She's like, hey, Barbie Land's just the opposite.
This is if Dorothy lived in like, you know, in the Wizard of Oz the whole time. And then she came to Kansas. And then people are like, why are they making the real world look like that?
Because it sucked. Oh, the Dust Bowl
brother,
sucked.
she lived in a set, huh? She lived in a perfect set.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up as well, because that is really what makes this movie so great as well, is that it doesn't look like fucking garbage. Like, yes, it's ugly, pink, fluorescent bullshit, right? It's all that ugly Barbie shit you see when you have kids or you walk the aisle at Target or whatever, right? Every single day, you're like, God, look at that ugly fucking plastic sitting in my house, right? But in a movie set, you're like, dude, they fucking cooked. Like, it's all real. Everything looks great. It fits perfectly. Like, you see the Barbie car, and you're like, that's the Barbie car.
Yeah,
I've seen one of those.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you see the house, you're like, wow, that is literally just a life-size replica version of a Barbie house. And then you see that they made all this stuff out of the same materials that they make the toys out of. And just that love and care, like we're talking about, like, dude, you know how much money they have put into this movie without knowing it was going to be a massive success. I mean, obviously they believed in it, and they believed in Greta Gerwig, and Margot Robbie's a producer on this movie, so they both have a lot to say.
Risks were taken, though.
Risks were taken, and it's stupid to act like they weren't either. You know, like, at least give them that respect. Like, this was a big risk. This could have been a huge, huge fucking miss.
I will say that this is insert the Disney hate here, that this movie costing what it costs, and Guardians and Black Panther, well, Guardians looked a little better, but everything else costing double what this movie costs and looking half as good is insane.
Okay, I don't.
This is the Chelsea.
Bring up some random internet fucking nerd, but I'm going to. Like, I just saw some guy. He was like, "Why did they shoot this real when they could have just used CGI?" Right? And he was like, "The only thing I can honestly think of is that it's cheaper now to use real stuff than it is to make CGI." And my whole time, I'm like, "You can't tell that you did it because it looks fucking 1,000 times better." In his head, he's just like, "Oh no, it must be
cost effective." This guy's an executive.
What kind of fucking movie fan are you? That for sure was cost effective.
It reminds you of like the Seinfeld clip you were showing me before this.
They write it off. When I hear a fucking when I hear that a movie might kill a studio, I'm like, good for you, man.
Yeah,
like, you fucking took them for all they were worth. Those fucking slimy bastards.
You like the Northman? Good.
Good. You lost the studio tens of millions of dollars. Well, now you're a real director.
Bo was afraid. Good. Let A24 lose some money. Let A24. Yeah, exactly. You lose money for Ari Aster, bitch.
Yeah, so I do think that Warner Brothers, they probably offset all the bad shit that happened with The Flash, with Barbie, right?
Facts.
They're like, oh, thank God. And you know, in another universe, they could have had both of these movies at the same exact time.
Yeah.
Because Christopher Nolan left Warner Brothers because of David Zaslav and those fucking slimy scuzzbags over at Warner Brothers who just fuck over filmmakers all the time, right? Like, the house that fucking Stanley Kubrick was welcomed in with open arms. Be like, and now look how you treat your best, right? Like, maybe they'll do Greta Gerwig better, but like, let's just hope she can be like the start of the sea of change again, of like Warner Brothers maybe trying to respect some of the people who work for them, you know?
Yeah.
Like, because they don't do it to Denis Villeneuve either. So let's see what happens. But it's kind of funny with all this writer's strike and actor strike stuff going on too, that you have to give Warner Brothers the credit, because it's like, look, when it works, it fucking works, dude. Like, and why can't you just understand that if you gave all these movies the same attention that you gave Barbie? I know you can only do it 12 times a year, right? That's about the average movies that a studio produces every year. Be like, but can you give even like half the care that you do to the other movies, you know? So that you do to Barbie, and maybe, just maybe, if you fucking let these directors like flourish and have ideas and don't just shut them down all the time, that like, wow, look, you might get a good fucking movie. Wow, shocker, right? Who could have imagined?
When you employ somebody to make a good movie for you and you let them make a good movie for you. We've been talking about all week. You're like, just let me, you paid me to do the job, right? Let me do my job. So who's the director, you or me? Yeah, because exactly. Like, if you were the director, why are you paying me?
So I don't really have like all that much to say about Barbie plot wise or anything. It's just I really enjoyed the movie. That's also another reason why these are not two separate episodes, because like I said, Oppenheimer was the one for me. But when I watched Barbie, she cooked. Like, respect.
I think obviously.
I also heard her say that she doesn't plan on making a sequel. So if they make sequels and she's not involved, I will not be there.
Yeah.
And I can also respect her to be like, I'm one and done in this.
I am not interested.
Yeah, like, no, I didn't come to make the Barbie franchise. Like, now I do want to make
mine.
I hope she makes a gigantic Nope-sized movie.
One for me.
Whatever, right? But make it more like White Noise.
Yeah.
Like, if she makes a huge movie like that, but it's White Noise again, oh, sick.
Get Netflix to make it so I could lose some money. Yeah. But I guess just certain parts that I just want to bring up of the Barbie movie, it was really funny, and I think that's something that's resonated even still with us. Oppenheimer, the memes are alive and well, but Barbie as well. I think Ryan Gosling's comedic performance, like, he method acted, he cooked.
He's the first method actor to not be a complete asshole.
Yeah, he was just like really embodied the quirkiness, as we said for Wes Anderson. Yeah, the Kenergy. He was more than Knuff.
Yes,
but
he was fantastic.
I just sublime. Sublime. It's just so good.
That's how I felt about him. I mean, I love him. Can't do any wrong in my book. He made a bad movie. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, right.
The Great Man. I don't know what that is. Yeah. He wasn't bad.
It was great. Wonderful performances. Wonderful soundtrack, I guess, right?
Yeah.
It fit the vibe perfectly for the movie.
It makes sense.
Just beautiful looking movie.
I like the like Dua Lipa, John Cena type stuff like that. Just always kind of funny. You know what I mean?
I wish they wouldn't have told us that. Like, it'd be nice if that was just a surprise. Like, hey, look, John Cena. I like this movie for the same reason I like movies like Speed Racer. I'm like, look at all this. Look at this. Like, this shit makes me sick to look at.
The reason why I like Cat in the Hat.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, this makes me sick. Like, last night I rewatched Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory one, the one with Johnny Depp.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I told my wife, because she likes Barbie, she likes like Willy Wonka, she likes these really crazy movies. Yeah, right. And I was like, you just like movies that are like could not exist. Like they're when you watch them, you're like, there's nothing about this that is real.
Cats.
Like, yeah, exactly. No, she's not letting me watch that movie. I want to watch that movie so fucking bad.
I know. It's like, I gotta know.
I've been denied.
I gotta know.
I have to. You have to look into the abyss.
This is when they were trying to shield James Corden.
I don't know. I don't want to end it on Cats, so say something else nice about Barbie and let's get out of here.
I mean, yeah, but I hope that in the future we get a lot more. Obviously, we'll see if movies still even exist in a couple of months, but where we get the Barbenheimer synergy, where two polar opposite movies in terms of what the studio thinks are trying to attract, just pull everybody to come in. Maybe it's the perfect amount of time. Like you said, it's summer. Maybe the people are out. You know, the birds are trying to watch some movies. Yeah. And like it just maybe was the perfect timing after the still a little bit pressure off the pandemic. People really want to go out, but I just hope we get more moments like this that I do think will help push the industry forward. I think obviously it's kind of sad that these little spurts happen like Avatar and then it just goes kind of dead. And there's stuff is obviously much more expensive now. So even when movies rack in the 200 million or whatever, like Avatar, like people were still putting it in the negative for a long time, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough too to have a moment like this, and this is why it's so special, because we did have a couple really huge movie moments lately, like Avatar, the Super Mario movie. But as much as I love Avatar, not every single person does, right? Has no cultural relevance. Nobody fucking likes it, right? How does it make $2 billion and nobody I know has seen it? Maybe because you know like 10 people. But then you know you get the Super Mario Brothers movie too, and you're like, yes, it was fun and everything, but that was pretty fucking cursed, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, this sucks, you know? Like that doesn't necessarily feel good. That Mario made $1 billion, you know?
No.
Even though Barbie's not that different, like, but I don't. One felt like Glep Shitto, and one felt like somebody was actually trying to tell a story.
And it's like, yeah, we talked about prior. We talked about Guardians, right? And like Guardians is again part of the bigger IP machine, which they make the money, but that ends up being lost in the other bullshit that they're gonna make. It's not like that money goes into, and so then the next movie Disney's gonna make is a really small film that wouldn't have gotten made. No, it's another big IP shit that sometimes nobody asked for, you know, and so
Secret Invasion.
Those movies, that money that may have been like, oh, look, they did good with Guardians. Maybe we'll get more quality. No, it just gets lost.
That's a one-off.
That just goes all into what Bob Iger's pocket.
Yeah, exactly. And then he's like, "You guys want more than $5,000 a week? You fucking asshole!
Come outside, Bob Iger. We just want to talk."
So go see one of these movies. Go see both of these movies. Support the cinema. You know. This is a moment that probably won't happen again for a very long time because of the bleak outlook of the future of movies. But I guess I'll leave on this. A24 is still going to make movies because they know how to play by the rules. Okay, bye-bye.